Hi, everybody. Welcome to our webinar today. We appreciate you taking the time out to learn about branding yourself for professional success. Your speaker today is Kim Proxmire, who's a senior strategist here at Greenfield Belster. My name's Erica Ritzer. I'm a partner here at Greenfield Belster as well. Kim is going to take the lead on this presentation and walk you through some really wonderful information about how you can personally brand yourself. It's real helpful for your attorneys. You'll get lots of valuable information that you can take back to them. Kim has been in legal marketing for about 25 years. Started her career at Anheuser-Busch, but quickly moved in-house to several Midwestern law firms. She then was a consultant with Jaffe Associates, and for the past several years, we've been fortunate enough to have her here at Greenfield Belster. I've been with Greenfield Belster doing legal marketing for 23 years, all the way from the beginning of my career when I worked on the original Howery and Simon campaign, which was one of the first branding campaigns, all the way through Oric and Wobble Carlyle and some of the large national firms. Kim and I now specialize more in smaller firm market. Greenfield Belster services firms on our smaller side that are less than 75 attorneys. So we're going to go ahead and get started and jump right in here. Please chat any questions that you have, and we'll definitely leave plenty of time at the end to answer them.
All right, great. What Erica didn't mention is that 23 years ago when I started, I actually hired Greenfield Belzer in my first law firm. So all through those years, I have worked with Greenfield Belzer in some capacity or another, and now I'm on the other side of the table, which is a great place to be. I had identified this topic as important because I am a real firm believer that you cannot have a personal business development plan without first understanding your personal brand and what you actually have to sell. You know, this goes for firms and for individuals. I have been in firms where I've seen firms build the brand and then sit back and wait for work to come. It didn't work very well. I've also seen firms not want to spend the money to build a brand, but rather send folks out and be the boots on the ground and develop business. And my question to them has always been, what is the focus of their business development effort? What are they really aiming at? And honestly, that has been their question too. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We'll talk about a number of these things today. Whoops, went a little too fast on that. Okay, so today's agenda is going to be building a personal brand, and then what that looks like and how that's a little bit different from the firm brand. Then we're going to look at the personal brand as an actual extension of the firm brand, and then building a personal plan. So once we understand what our personal brand is, how can we move that to doing something with it and taking advantage of those selling points? So building the personal brand. What I first want to cover is that basically really what a brand is. I'm not going to throw a lot of theory at you today because I know that's not what we're after here, but I do want you to understand a little bit of that or what a brand is before we even get at what strategy is. So what a brand is not is a logo alone. And I've been in a number of firms earlier in my career where our attorneys thought that that's exactly what it was the logo, and it's much more than that. A brand is a distinctive identity based on a promise of value different from any other. So it's what you do differently or your firm does differently than all of your competitors in that same space. Even if that's only 5 degrees of difference, that counts, and that's enough to build a brand on. Take, for example, Skadden. So we all know that Skadden does mergers and acquisitions. That's why Skadden is red, powerhouse. You know, red means power, mergers, big deal, solid, been around for a long time, we've earned this title. It's also why Skadden is Skadden and not Skadden-Arp, Meagher, and Flom. You know, it's been through the years that they've graduated and chopped off a name here and there along the way. It's because they've been so incredibly consistent with this that they've earned the right to just be Skadden now, and we all still know who they are. They haven't lost anything in that transition. So basically, we have so few opportunities to put our name in front of our clients that it really only makes sense that this should always be a consistent impression. However, having said that, we've also all been inside firms that sport over 20 different styles of business cards. We have seen 80 different fax forms, several styles of letterhead. And the reason that this happens is because for most lawyers, stationery is an office supply. It is not the cornerstone of branding. And even in today's environment, when so much of our communications are being sent electronically and digitally, The letterhead is the piece that probably, of all others, goes out more often. So that's why it's really critically important. So what we want you to do is to think of the brand as a personality. The consistency of it is transformed into that personality. What characteristics does it take on? What tone, what style, what feeling? That personality then contains the human qualities that you relate to and depend on in the relationship. And then finally, loyalty is the emotional payoff for that. So that is to make that brand very personal. Think of examples of brands that you follow or gravitate to. For me, one that I love to profile is Southwest Airlines. I really don't know their brand strategy, the details of it, or the business side of that. But what I can actually tell you from a consumer end of it is that they are a good value. They don't upcharge me for everything under the sun. They give me snacks when I'm on a long flight. Sometimes that's really important. They're actually really very funny, too. They were the only airline at the airline counter on Halloween Day that was dressed in costume, and they were having fun at it. And besides all of that, which is really important, their performance is fairly reliable for an airline. So I personally like Southwest Airlines, and they've created a brand in my head. Other examples of brands that we would recognize include the following. Everybody knows this one. Arguably the most successful branding campaign ever features the Marlboro Man. There's no headline here or even a name of the product, but a very strong personal style that resonates with some folks. And then another one likely to become one of the next most notable branding campaigns is Starbucks. So I've found Starbucks interesting. I followed their transition in their brand strategy. As you will notice, there is no name associated with this logo in print, but you still know immediately who it is. Before, Starbucks' name always used to be associated with this on their cups, on different things that you would see in print. And now when you look at a Starbucks cup, there is no name on it. And I actually have one sitting right in front of me, and there's no name here. It's just the Starbucks logo. The color is also another important element of branding, which I won't even get into today. But take, for example, this green. You never see varying shades of this Starbucks green. It is always the same. Look at the golden arches. They're always going to be golden. They've earned that reputation. They're never pink. They're never orange. There's never a cursive M. It's always the same. So there is a very strong consistency in delivering these brands. And my point shortly is going to be that a personal brand has to actually play by that same rules too, and that's really important to understand about developing that personal brand. So let's talk about some of those. And you all are going to laugh at this one, and I would probably too. But let me just say, I'm not advocating for your personal brand to be Kim Kardashian or anything like it. But the point here is that she has spent her entire career building a brand, a personal brand. Honestly, I think that's all she knows to do, and she's done a great job at it. She doesn't sing, she doesn't act, but building a brand is what she knows how to do, and she has built a very consistent, sexy brand. On the flip side of that is Princess Kate. Again, a very consistent, sophisticated brand has been built here. She's very tailored, not too sexy, not too frumpy. So good cross comparison between what a personal brand can look like. So how is the personality expressed in terms of a personal brand? And there's a number of ways. Think of it through your voice in print. How many times have you sent a scathing email and either felt remorseful for it or not, or even received one? I have to be honest, I received one this week, and it has dramatically changed the way that I think of this business person. And I wish that wouldn't have happened. It was completely unnecessary. But it does. It definitely changes how people view you, perceive you, and think of you. And that's a hard impression to get rid of. Also through your appearance. Do you go with a bow tie? Do you go tie-less? How do you dress? How do you look? There's differences, and we'll show you an attorney profile in a little bit where the gentleman is tie-less. He looks incredibly professional, but even more engaging, and that works for some. So it's all about the impression that you're trying to create. What about your manners and your polish? Are you folksy or refined? I will tell you, I've been in and out of a number of firms where I've seen both sides of that coin. Most attorneys that I've worked with have been very polished, very refined, but there have been a select few that have been frumpy, a little disheveled. They look like they haven't had a haircut in several months. They've got a shirt tail hanging out. And it really, that is not their thing. Detail is not their thing. They may be very great lawyers, but it certainly does start to cast an impression on the quality of their work. And then also by your printed or online communications. We talked a little bit about email, but what about articles you write or things that you respond to or blogs that you participate in? Those all count in creating a personality and a personal brand. So basically what we're saying here is the whole package counts. And note to self should be consistency all the way. So I want to get into something that I think really helps drive some of this home as actual real-life examples. Stacy West Clark is a relationship that we have at Greenfield Belzer. Some of you may know Stacy. She's been around for a long time. She actually used to be a lawyer with Morgan Lewis, an in-house lawyer, until she got really disenchanted with the practice of law, as some do, and crossed over into legal consulting. Stacy recently wrote this article, My Night with a Few Multi-Million-Dollar Rainmakers, and it was about her observations regarding lawyers who have done it really well and been very successful. What I've done is, because I think there's so much relevance to building a personal brand here, I've actually cut pieces of her observations and tips to share with you, because I think her points about being good professionals are critical to the practice of law, and probably even more importantly, to building your personal brand. Some of these things we likely take for granted. I know I learned something, actually didn't learn something, but had myself refreshed on something in Stacy's article. But for these successful folks, it all mattered, everything here. So for example, one of Stacy's observations was early on in their careers, these million-dollar babies all decided to pursue a hobby, which turned into a passion. So one took up tennis, another supported the arts. And these lawyers took up these interests because they really enjoyed them. Not at all initially because they thought business was going to come from them, but it was things they enjoyed and things where they wanted to invest their time. But because they chose endeavors that they really loved, each was able to actually use the activity very successfully to develop business. So a tip from Stacy's article: view your role as a lawyer who needs to bring in business to the firm and your partners, not to yourself. So lawyers who look to cross-sell a client to other sections and lawyers in their firm actually quite simply just make more money. There's only so much that you can bill as an individual. So if you focus on having the client served by numerous lawyers in your firm, your revenue numbers will naturally grow too. This is also the mindset that I tend to remind associates of when I work with them in terms of business development and coaching. I tell them, behave and act, think like a business owner. You're not one today, but if you start behaving like one now, you'll become one probably quicker because you'll have those disciplines down and you'll look the package and play the part. Observation number 2. Each of the rainmakers were not snobs despite their education and income level. So they were all very real, genuine, down-to-earth people who truly enjoy their profession. And it shows. They were likable, and thank goodness, because they're in a relationship-driven business. So they didn't rise above, and they didn't put themselves on a certain status level. They were normal, genuine folks. Tip: follow every client no matter where he or she goes. So clients will lose their jobs or make changes along the way, and follow them. Each of these individuals made a point to help any client who lost his or her job. They made connections, they sent resumes, and this is all about building your network. I often tell attorneys who grumble at developing a business plan or who actually have to go market simply because the firm mandated it, but this is like a bank account. So making consistent small deposits over a very long period of time will yield great results. An example of this is I worked with a small firm in DC for a period of time, primarily building individual attorney business development plans. And I had one associate who thought he was above it all, and God bless him, he fought me the whole way on this, didn't want to do the plan, grumbled about it, kept rescheduling our calls, thought he was evading me, but it didn't quite work for him. So we spent a couple years doing this whole routine, and I wasn't giving up on him. And I got a call several months ago from him saying, I owe you an apology, but more importantly, I want to tell you that your little bank account analogy, I actually just saw how that works. over the last several months, my phone has been ringing, and I am now substantiating and paying for my entire self plus one other in my firm. I am on the track, and the firm told me I had to do this to get on the partnership track, and I'm there. Thank you. Thank you for staying after me, and thank you for helping me see how this is going to pay off. That doesn't quite happen so beautifully for everybody, but for him, he didn't have the choice. It was do this or don't become partner. So observation number 3, none of the rainmakers smoke or has had more than one alcoholic drink with a client ever. Again, going back to building your personal brand, the whole package counts. How you carry yourself, how you communicate, how you behave. So needless to say, these folks never had gotten tipsy or made any foolish mistakes that they wish they hadn't, or even given off the wrong brand impression. I actually know a businesswoman who makes this mistake all the time. She doesn't apologize for it. She knows she does it. She looks forward to the next social engagement or the next party or the next cocktail reception like no other. But everybody else knows this is her MO and this is the way she behaves. And can you imagine what this has probably done for her brand image and more importantly, getting work, getting more clients? Tip, keep your business antenna up no matter where you are. These rainmakers that she interviewed assess everyone they meet and every situation that they are in to spot possible new business. The sidelines of a soccer field, airplanes, those kinds of places. Another great example, which happened to me, I was on a flight from Columbus, Ohio last summer to New York. I was going to do a brand pitch to a potential new client for Greenfield Belzer, and I was sitting in the seat next to the window, and I rarely talk to people on the airplane because I'm usually working. And I'm running through my presentation, which was 70-some slides. And I was going through the presentation in my head, and the gentleman next to me was very polished, very professional. But the odd thing about him is he kept slouching over into my side, and I couldn't get over any farther. And I think he finally recognized that he had gotten too far into my territory. And he finally said, what is it that you do? So he clearly had been reading my slides. And I started to explain what Greenfield Belzer does in our process. And I said, well, hey, you know what? You're actually a captive audience for another hour. Why don't I do my presentation to you as if you were the client? Turns out he happens to be the managing partner of a Columbus law firm, which was fantastic. I had no idea I was going to be meeting a potential client that morning and had every opportunity to take that and blow it into a bigger opportunity for us. They are not a client yet, but a great relationship developed from that, and we stay in touch, and he is now on our mailing list. So marketing is not something that you turn on and turn off, or we do between 12 and 1 and 5 to 6. Marketing is something that just gets built into the entire being of ourselves. I have a lot of lawyers say to me, so what hours of the day are most effective to market, and how many days a week or how many hours a week should I dedicate to marketing? Well, those are great questions, and it's fine to set some benchmarks for yourself. The most important thing is marketing it just happens. It just goes, and there's nothing that's off limits. Observation number 4. All 4 of these individuals, whether on a casual day or otherwise, deliberately made sure they looked well dressed. So they bought their clothes at nice but not ridiculously expensive stores, and they made sure that they always looked very professional. They're always ready for the unexpected encounter, which you'll have eventually in your life, with a client, and they look the part of being very smart. So appearance matters a lot, as we talked about a little bit earlier. I can personally say that after reading Stacey's article, it reminded me that I should no longer be going to the grocery store looking like I just got drugged through the meat grinder. Another great example of this was one Friday night in February, I took my kids to an open gymnastics. Never been, didn't know what to expect. All the moms were rushing out to go to dinner with their husbands. I ended up staying, had not brought anything, no computer, no nothing with me, so I wasn't really sure what I was getting into. Went and sat down, let my kids spend a couple hours there doing gymnastics, and another woman came and sat down next to me. And we struck up a conversation. We actually really started to like each other a lot. We had a lot in common. Our kids were same ages, yada, yada. Anyhow, long story short, she asked what I did. I told her. And she said, well, isn't that interesting? My husband's a lawyer. He just broke off of Jones Day with a big chunk of them, and they're starting their own firm. You should talk. And I said, yes, of course, we should. So next thing I know, I'm having coffee with her husband a few weeks ago to talk about, what is the new venture like? What's the firm going to be? What are their goals? Have they put any of the pieces together that they need to put together? Again, another relationship has developed. It may or may not turn into business, but you never know where you're going to be for that to happen. So the next tip from Stacy is make sure your invoices are as perfect as your briefs. They will be poured over by your clients. So make sure that they're detailed and they indicate where you have provided value and done anything for free or at a discount. Again, this adds to the big picture of your personal brand and being a valued provider, which is critically important today. And though you may not be going for that value as a brand image, I get that. Clients still expect more than legal services from their lawyers today. They expect value adds to that relationship, and they're willing to go where they get more than just legal services. I have done a significant number of client interviews through the work that we do at Greenfield Belzer. And one client told me this past summer that we were doing some interviews for. Actually, we interviewed a client's client. It was a large insurance company. She said, I want my law firm to do just exactly this. I want you to show me value on your invoices where you provided that value, because others in my organization are looking at these too. And while I may be the direct source of work for you, you better believe that my superiors also look at these invoices after I approve them. So A, I want to save face, and B, I really want them to understand that I brought the firm of choice to our organization, and we want to keep this relationship. So show me where you're providing that value. So a good rule of thumb is to look at the bill and ask, did the client get a good value? If not, be willing to adjust that. And more importantly, don't allow the invoice to go out that you wouldn't expect to be receiving yourself. And that's just a good kind of rule of thumb there. So there's a lot more of this going on today, more than ever before. And we no longer live in that world of being able to raise our rates to make more money. Rather, clients are expecting the same or lower rates and more value for all of that. The next tip, don't confuse title with authority. So although it's nice to know that general counsel of a company, most of those legal engagements are done at lower reporting levels. Get to know those people and deliver outstanding service to them. A great example of this is at the first firm I was at. I worked with a very junior level go-getter labor and employment attorney. He was actually a junior partner at the time, who was determined to be managing partner of the firm one day. But he needed that book of business to do so. So he asked me to help him develop a business plan that would get him there with a very strong strategy in mind of targeting his age level and seniority level counterparts at client organizations. So let me tell you, none of the other partners were targeting those folks at our clients. But this one wanted to, and I thought it was a really interesting strategy for on board to help him. So he spent time, what we did in terms of his business development strategy is he was going to spend time where they spent time. He did what they like to do. He went so far as to buy NASCAR tickets and take them all to NASCAR races all over the country because that's what they did. You know, they're in manufacturing. He got rid of his Lexus, bought a pickup truck. So he really started to kind of walk the walk, talk, and talk, walk, and all of that good stuff. But what he was most interested in is the work that was going to come once those individuals started to move up in the organization, or even more importantly, left those organizations for higher positions in new client organizations. Today, he is a managing partner of this firm, and he has been for about the last 3 or 4 years. So the personal brand as an extension of the firm's brand. Get into that. The goal of all communications, before we get into that, I kind of want to go through what we've identified as the goal of all communications, particularly electronic communications, and what the electronic brand must communicate. So first, design around your business goals. What are your business goals? So we can talk as a firm and we can talk as an individual. What are those business goals? Where are you driving your practice and where is your firm driving the business? Position yourself as important, confident, and a leader. So stake out a position and own it. Be willing to own something and be confident about that. Be known for something. Preview what it's like to work with you. Give people an idea of who you are and what you're like. You have less opportunity in person to do this today, and more of that is happening digitally. So be willing digitally to preview what it's like to work with you. Open yourself up to that. Encourage dialogue. Firms are trying to do this through blogging and all of those kinds of things that encourage that conversation back and forth. Humanize the offering. We like to hire real human lawyers today. And so give a glimpse of that as well. Be real, be genuine, be human. Have those relationships. You're in a relationship-driven business. That's critically important. Tell stories and deliver proof. So all good marketing is about telling good stories. But a story only carries the weight if the proof is behind it, particularly in marketing a law firm. And then finally, use charts, maps, tables, and diagrams to deliver substantive content. We're not a reading society any longer. We don't want that homepage reading experience. The reading experience is a little more acceptable in an attorney bio and a practice bio, when and where you can break that up and make it much more easy to wade through and appealing to do so. So we're going to dive into a few of these and give very concrete examples of what these look like in play. The first one is position yourself as important, confident, and a leader. And we've got Ball Janik, which is a 60 attorney firm in the Pacific Northwest. Their attorney photos play a really prominent role on almost every page of their website, and the rich photography really starts to humanize the firm and gives a real open preview of what it might be like to work with them. When you look at Dinah Alexander's bio, she's very warm, she's very engaging, so that human experience, but she looks like a leader. She looks very confident in her position. So you can be warm and professional and confident all at the same time. You don't have to have just a non-smiling head and shoulder shot. A lot comes through these practice bios or these attorney bios. Stuart McCalvey, we have Andrea Shakespeare here, very similar situation. I easily find the information I need about her. I have a quote from her. She looks warm and engaging, but yes, she looks very professional and very confident. So preview what it's like to work with you. We have Gesmer Optigrove, which is a 23-attorney New England firm, and they help emerging and technology-based companies. 80% of their clients are tech-based companies. So a profile of a typical client for them, or I should say even a perfect client for them, would be a 28-year-old graduate from MIT who happens to be starting a business, plans to build it, and then sell it off, and then do that over and over and over again. So these clients are clearly cutting edge, requiring a very different approach from the firm. Now, let me tell you, these lawyers are like any other lawyers. Some are very conservative, some are very traditional. But they understood the importance of that brand strategy for them and the market that they were selling to and what they were selling. So instead of looking like a traditional law firm website, they needed to mix that up a bit. All of their materials are very reflective of this style. They're targeting the serial entrepreneur. And they wanted to show the personality of their folks through the full body images, because that's what they think resonates with their audience. So the next one, tell stories and deliver proof. And Peck Schaefer is a great example of that. Peck Schaefer is a 40-attorney bond boutique firm that's headquartered in Cincinnati, Ohio. So when we started working with Peck Schaefer, they had the cream letterhead with the black script logo. And what they didn't realize after we had done some research was that they were falling number 1 and 2 on the most bond deals done across the country for consecutive years. That's a big deal, and that story wasn't being told. So that story had to be told, but what we didn't want to do is tell it all in writing. So we ended up creating this visual image of the U.S. and gave them the opportunity to personally plot points on this map, the green dots, where they could go in and where they were doing bond deals in the country, they plot a point, and when you roll over that point, it pops up a representative transaction that they want to showcase or highlight. They had total control of populating this map. The goal over time was to show this as a visual map that we are not just a little Cincinnati firm. Actually, we have 6 offices through the U.S., and we are doing bond work across the country. Robbins Geller is another great example of going through that. They are a 150-attorney plaintiffs firm in San Diego. You have a half a second on your homepage to tell that story of what you do well. It has to be succinct, and it has to be easy to understand. So the goal with them was to reposition them as a very sophisticated, high-quality plaintiffs firm and take a complete departure from the traditional look and feel that most plaintiffs firms convey. They wanted a very clean, high-end site that had crisp and powerful imagery, which was the key, and a focus on the fact that they are a go-to firm in this area. They really wanted to tell the story and did so to explain up their significant cases and winnings with the stories behind them. They didn't jump out and say, we are super fantastic, hire us, or call now, free consultation, those kinds of things. They're very tasteful and look very powerful. So the next one is to humanize your offering. And Stratton Faxon is a great example of that. They are a 4-attorney plaintiffs firm, yes, 4 attorneys in New Haven, Connecticut. 99% of their work comes from referral attorneys, but they still have to appeal to the direct client that they represent. The one that's had the catastrophic injury, been in a trucking accident, had a medical malpractice situation, and so on. So what we felt important to do is make that connection immediately with those buyers who were going online and looking at their bios. And we therefore incorporated snippets about each attorney, like, and you can see this on the screen, what's on my iPod, what I do when I'm not practicing law. And we wanted to give them a glimpse inside who that attorney really is. And this is the example of the attorney that doesn't have a bow tie and who is tieless, yet he looks very professional. Okay, so when we talk about humanizing the offering, it's important to also understand that this is important online as it is offline. So mastering the art of conversational branding, what does that look like? How often have you been to a cocktail party or a luncheon and you yourself have introduced yourself and said, hi, I'm a lawyer, or someone else has done the same? This is a very typical lawyer introduction. There's no wow factor here. It's actually very oatmeal and kind of vanilla. So I have to ask, where is the personal brand in this introduction? It's missing. And it does not give the opportunity to dive deeper into who you are and what you do. So when we talk about this 30-second pitch, elevator pitch, what did this lawyer fail to do? Well, first, he didn't identify who he was, nor did he identify who he works for or with, and he did not identify how he does what he does, or even what he does, for that matter. What should have happened, or what you as a client want to know out of that engagement is, who are you? How can you help me? And maybe even, how can I help you? And that's really important, and that's what strikes up that dialogue. So here we are. No matter how sophisticated technology gets, I think we all can safely say that all of business is really like a giant cocktail party anymore, where your elevator pitch makes the difference between being noticed and being ignored. It used to be that our first introductions were made in person. Years ago, when I started in this business, it was training lawyers how to network in a room. That's still important today, but things are happening much quicker than that. So even how to network in a room, how to introduce yourself at cocktail parties, social events, we were having that face-to-face time to make those introductions. And what's more important about that is we got control of the message. Some did that very well. Others didn't. They weren't comfortable with it, as our example of the lawyer just a minute ago. Today, we get less opportunity to personalize our intro message because more and more of our relationships are actually starting online. So I can't tell you how many people meet online or go to an attorney's bio and then call them up and say, hey, I hear you like blah, 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 whatever happens to be in the personal bio, or I understand that you do this kind of work, you were referred to me. But before they ever pick up that phone and make that personal introduction, they're looking you up online. So bios have to bring the personal brand to life electronically as best as they can. It is a missed opportunity if you're not doing that. So for example, who are we interested in at a cocktail party? Is it the person that drones on and on about themselves? Highly not. Is it the people who feel to ask us about ourselves? Probably not. You don't want to read bios online that are to this tune either. So the 30-second elevator pitch really needs to look more like this. Have a purpose. What do you want the listener to do? Tell a story. All great marketing, as I noted earlier, is about telling great stories. It should be conversational. So create that dialogue. Give them nuggets to be able to ask further questions. And most importantly, position yourself as an important, confident, and a leader about something. So a great example of the perfect elevator pitch that not one of us will probably ever get the chance to use. I was working with a firm in Cleveland a couple years ago, and we were talking about elevator pitches and working with their associates on developing these elevator pitches and being more powerful and deliberate about it. And I said, well, what's yours? And this was the managing partner of this firm, and he said, oh, that's easy. I've got a great one. And I got help from Berkey Belzer, who walked me through how to do an elevator pitch, which, of course, I was more interested in. I said, well, tell me what it is. So I said, okay, here it is. I'm Brent Buckley at Buckley King, and I spent the last 6 months in jail. Actually, it was prison. And I said, well, that is interesting. I don't hear that very often. I said, what's the reaction you get? And he said, oh, I get a lot of reaction from that one. And he said, what it has enabled me to do is I can go on and talk about my practice and explain why I was in prison for 6 months. He said, the truth of the matter is I had a client involved in a crime. And I was going to the prison to develop the strategy for the case. So he said, I can't use that. That's not got longevity, and I can't use that forever. But that's working for right now. So again, while we all don't have that as a hook, we have a hook somewhere, and you have to think about it. And I have to be honest, there's probably not very many of us that would have even thought of that as a hook, to be truthful. So take the opportunity. That's as much of your personal brand as everything else that we've talked about. Okay, moving on. So all decisions are emotional decisions. We'll look at that. When people, both in terms of the personal brand and the firm's brand, when people look for services, it is predominantly an intellectual exercise. And most important is expertise. So I'm making a short list. I'm going to put people on my short list that have the expertise I need for my matter. And think about the process that you even go through when you're buying a car. You're going to weed out by number of seats, miles per gallon, cost. Are there heated seats? Those things, those criteria pieces that are very important to you. When people decide to buy and finally choose a service, it is predominantly an emotional exercise. Most important is comfort, and the brand provides that comfort. So an example of that is if I'm buying estate planning services, and I have 2 lawyers to choose from, both very good in what they do, I have no way of evaluating the quality of their product or the end result. I really don't. I'm trusting that if they're on my short list, they're both good. What I can evaluate my experience on is what that experience was with the lawyer. And that's the brand. That is your personal brand, how comfortable you make them feel, how confident you make them feel, and that whole package that we've already talked about. All right, so building a personal brand. Let me back up. Now that we've talked about that brand platform from which to work and an understanding of what your message is, we're going to go into talking about how we take that to market. Now we know what we have to sell. How do we sell that? So the only bad marketing is no marketing, and the next level of bad marketing is marketing without a strategic plan. The first firm that I was in, the marketing partner had the motto, just do it. And he just wanted the attorneys to go out and do something over doing nothing. And I appreciate that. And I was young and I was green and I didn't know any better to that. So after we spent a year of just doing it, and it meant everything under the sun, and we were all over the board, we wasted, and I was able to show them, I tracked it, we wasted a large percentage of our budget that first year and got very little from it. So the second year, we took Just Do It, and that got translated into doing things that were much more strategic-minded. And I'll show you what that looks like. So while at that firm, I developed the strategy pyramid. At the top of the pyramid, I developed the firm-wide plan. I said, look, folks, we are not doing one thing further and spending any more money on the budget till we go through this process. We're going to first develop a firm-wide plan. What, from a firm perspective, are we going to do strategic marketing-wise? The middle of that pyramid is the practice and industry plan. So if we understand where the firm's driving itself and what the firm goals are, now our practice and industry groups need to filtrate some of that into their plans. And on down the pyramid to the individual level, which is the boots on the ground and the traction on the street, the individuals then also had to take some of the tactics from the practice and industry plans and filter into their individual plans. So what happens is if we're operating without a strategic plan, it's actually like conducting a building without a blueprint. That is possible, but it's not likely cost effective, which was our situation the first year, or efficient, and the final results are almost impossible to predict. We were all over the board, and we really didn't get results, to be quite honest. So with the blueprint or this strategy plan in place, the builder actually knows where or what this will be. Is it a shed? Is it a cathedral? And likewise, with the well-defined strategy, the firm moves forward confidently knowing what kind of future it is building and where the dollars are actually being spent. So moving forward, the goal of this is to actually have alignment from top to bottom. So again, I've been in firms where none of this existed, and we started at the individual level, and we only made traction within our individual silos. I've been in other firms after I got smarter and wiser, where we put this in place, and we did more on less budget. So it's very possible to make this happen. So why the pyramid works, aside from everything I already just said, or in addition to, is it establishes goals that align with the firm. So we have clear, actionable, and measurable goals that are the difference between good intentions and real results. It also guides the firm's resources. So now I know people and finances, what's going to be committed to that, how much I'm going to need, and if I can benchmark against that. And it also fosters target and cross-marketing opportunities. So we identify and maximize opportunities within the industry, clients, and client groups. Okay, so we're going to get into building the personal business development plan and the components. I wanted to highlight there's 5 key areas to putting a plan together. First, you obviously have to establish what your goals are. Second, we're going to look at client development opportunities. So within our existing clients, where are those opportunities? What can we move forward? What are gaps in the services that we're providing that we can provide? We want to look at new clients and prospects. Okay, where's the low-hanging fruit? Where's the clients that we haven't done any work for that we could do work for? We want to look at relationships and engagement. This would be everything from professional civic to industry involvement, and then also referral relationships. And then the personal brand, and that's building that public profile and credibility. So in walking through this is a one of the business development plans that I use for attorneys when I work with them. And this is an individual plan. So one of the things, and I've worked with it in an accounting firm locally, where we did this very process for recently. And what I had them do was identify, this is the firm goals, the apex of the triangle, identify what their firm's strategic priorities were. Where are we driving this business? What are we trying to achieve? Once I know that, I know how to help the practice groups and the individuals move forward. So for this particular firm, their 3 strategic priorities were and are growth. We want to grow revenue by 15%. Culture, very important to them. We want to continue to build and foster a culture of fun. They definitely owned that type of culture in doing client interviews for them. The client said, these guys present accounting in the guy next door fashion. I actually like talking to my accountant. You don't get that very often, trust me. So that is part of that firm's brand, is their culture of fun and presenting accounting in that fashion for their clients. Very simple and simplified. And the third strategic priority for them was continuing learning and development within their accountants. To develop our people into hard-to-replace resources was their specific goal. Once I understand what my firm's goals are, now we need to build our own individual goals. So as an individual, what am I going to do to help the firm achieve those 3 things? Sure, I'm going to have some individual goals that don't relate to that, but I also need to make sure that I'm having some individual goals that are helping me help the firm move forward there. And then what we also want to do is identify action steps or tactics to moving that forward, resources that may be required, and due dates. The next thing that I said we would talk about is the client development opportunities. So again, this is looking at what clients do we already service and where are there gaps or holes in that service. But one thing I love to do for firms, and I encourage every firm to do this if you have the opportunity, is to develop a gap analysis. And this works really well by practice areas. It works really well firm-wide, too. So you take all the practice areas of the firm, if I'm going firm-wide, and I may take my top and put that in a grid across the top, and I put down the side of the grid my top 50 clients, or whatever you want to identify, 100, whatever it is. And you go through and say for client A, we're doing trust and estate work and labor and employment. Oh, but we're not doing ERISA. Why aren't we? And now you've got an opportunity to evaluate that open gap. Why aren't we doing that work? We have the lawyers here. We have the depth. We're good value. So now it begs the question, who is doing that work? Who's our competitor doing that work? And then evaluating that competitor. Do we have an advantage point against them? What is it? And now that we know all of that, and this requires a lot of internal work, but now that we know that, can we put a little mini strategy in place to go after that ERISA work? Is that a possibility? So a gap analysis is really important if firms are willing to put that hard work into it. But in terms of your individual plans, the client development opportunities, think through where those opportunities are. What clients do you feel you can get more work out of? What are the target services? And then most importantly, what are your action steps? Methodically, step by step, what are you going to do to go get that work? And then likewise for new clients, these would be clients that you do no work for, but is the low-hanging fruit. Or you've suspected there may be an opportunity there, or you drive by their building all the time and think, oh my gosh, why aren't we doing work for them? So those people go on this list. Again, identify those key relationships, the people there that you would know, and if you don't know them, now you know where your starting point is. You're going to start to find out who they are. And action steps, and really big on the action steps because that's what drives you forward. And quantify as much as possible. And then finally, the back end of this is relationships and engagement. So are you involved in the community, professionally, civically, industry involvement? Where are your referral relationships? Who do you know that can be connectors, that can be network you with other people? Market smart, don't market hard is what I tell attorneys. Use those people you know. And there's ways to do that without it looking like that, very tasteful ways. And then organizations and groups. Where can you get involved and where can you plug in to be involved where you're going to be in front of the people that you may want to drive work from or to get to know as referral sources. I would caution you, don't get involved for the sake of just developing business, as we noted earlier from Stacy's article. Get involved because you really have an interest in it. And don't just get involved with one toe in. Get involved with a whole foot in. Otherwise, you're not going to do a great job, and you're not going to be memorable to anyone there that you would want to have as part of your network or as a client. And then finally, in wrapping that up, the personal brand is a part of this too. So as a personal brand, what are you going to do? Do you have a really bang-up LinkedIn profile, and are you using it to any degree? Have you built credibility in terms of being a speaker and being known for something? And if you're not a speaker, that is totally fine. How about writing or blogging? Those people that don't like to be out in front do a great job, and blogging and writing is a perfect opportunity for them. But create that credibility through that personal profile. I had one attorney say to me, I really have some very high-level aspirations to grow my practice. And the thing that I feel like I'm missing to be truly competitive, and it's in the construction field, is the fact that I'm not a very good public speaker. And all of my strongest competitors are on that speaking circuit all the time. What do I do? I said, well, that's terrific. You're going to go learn how to be a public speaker. And so he is. He's Toastmasters, and he's doing all the things he needs to be doing to learn how to be a really good public speaker. And not even be really good, just to be comfortable getting up there and doing it. So that is the conclusion of our presentation. And we've gone, again, from building that personal brand to how it relates to the firm's brand and vice versa, all the way down to now that we have that personal brand, how do we drive that out there and get business with it? So do we have any questions?
Kim, actually we do. Some people have chatted some in. So let me throw them out there to you, and then you and I can jump in. So the first question was, do you think people are truly interested in personal information of an attorney bio page, or is it just put on there to add interest?
Well, you know what? We just got asked this question, I think it was just last week. A firm asked us this because we're working with them on revamping their bio pages as part of a website. And our answer to that was yes, yes, emphatically yes, because again, it points back to creating that relationship online and creating those human aspects to the relationship. We just had an attorney tell us, Oh my gosh, I had a client call me because he saw that I liked the Baltimore Orioles in my bio. He called me to talk about it. He had a potential matter, but he was calling to see if we had a connection. That struck up the conversation. We were on the phone for an hour talking about sports. We loved the conversation. It was engaging, and guess what? I got a new client out of it. So it does matter. I will be very honest with you, though. There are firms that shudder at that very thought. So if you're in a very, very traditional firm and that is not your firm style, we don't advocate that for everybody. But we are working with firms that want to be very non-traditional and are very aggressive at establishing a certain brand style, and that is part of it.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. I mean, they don't always get read, but the people that like that personal connection read those, and if you can establish one, it really can help solidify a relationship. Okay, next question was regarding attorney biographies also, bio pages. Is it better to keep it simple, or is more content better, and how much content would be right? I can jump in and say I think the lengthy prose, paragraph after paragraph after paragraph of narrative is not the way to go. I think you do want to cover all your bases. You want to give all the biographical and background information on an attorney, but it does want to be chopped up so it's easier for the reader. So education wants to be called out separately from bar admissions, and it can all be in a narrative. That's unfortunately the design of the page, but you need subheads. You need to be able to draw readers' attention to separate areas. However, I think the most important thing that most biographies lack is a representative matters section, because that's really what your clients are looking for. They know he went to law school, and they'll glance to see if it's a top-notch law school, and they're going to assume he can practice in the state that's where he's licensed, and they'll find that information out. But what they really want to know is, can he or she handle a matter that is similar to mine? And so many attorney biographies skip over that and don't, because it's difficult to get, because the attorney doesn't want to take the time to give it, because they don't want to name client names. You can work around all of that, but that's what makes a biography interesting and unique.
And let me add to that. We have so many people say, they say they do blah, 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 blah in their bio, but when I talked to them, I really didn't feel like they were as strong as how they wrote their bio. That's good and bad. Representative transaction section will actually weed out whether you really do that or whether you don't. Again, don't be everything to everybody. Own something, stake it out, be true to it, and craft your bio around that.
Okay, we got a couple more here. So what do you suggest a firm can do in order to align themselves more closely with who they are? It's interesting. That's not necessarily a personal brand question, but that's a firm brand question. And it really comes down to understanding your strategic goals and having a plan so that you take a good hard look at who you really are, and then what you go to market with is some subtext of that message.
Right. I would also say firms that don't take that good hard look are, and let me back up. A lot of firms don't want to do that, because what that means is we have to make choices. Developing a brand and staking out that position means we have to make some choices here. And choices are great because it further defines who you are, and that's why brand works. But firms that get uncomfortable with that are typically firms that don't want to make those choices. And not making choices is also actually making a choice, by the way. Making the choice to be everything to everybody isn't effective. So we do encourage firms to do that hard work and make those choices to figure out what you do well and how to put yourself out there.
Okay, let's see. How do you get attorneys to buy into branding and understand the importance of how it relates to them?
That's a really good question. I don't know if I have a ready answer for that. I'll tell you from my perspective, every firm that I was in-house with, I'll tell you the process I started with. I walked in, I did a communications audit. I wanted to look at every single piece of literature that we had in the office and what we were putting out on ourselves. Almost every single time, and I think it was every single time, what I found was the collection I referred to earlier, 20 different business cards, 80 fax forms, multiple letterheads, and it was shocking. It was more shocking to me than I expected to be. In every single one of those firms, I took poster boards. and I lined the poster boards with our stuff. And I had one poster board for business cards, one for letterhead, one for brochures, one for newsletters. And I made a concerted effort to get as much competitor literature as I possibly could. And I used that literature on the other poster boards. Set up a conference room, invited attorneys to come in and do a look-see and react. And that was the linchpin for me to every brand project that I launched. And I launched several of them within all of my firms. Because it told the story that I didn't have to. What that did was it cut through the chase for me to be able to now educate them on why the brand was valuable, what the brand would do for the firm, what the brand doesn't do for the firm, and what our competition was doing. So I think that was a really good way to start the process within the firm. And it opened the door for them to be more willing and vulnerable to listen to me. And it went from there. Erica, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is some firms have a culture where people buy into it and some don't, and some individual attorneys see the value in it. But I think it's like the example Kim gave of the attorney that came back to her and thanked her years later. If there are some attorneys in your firm that are on board with it, then you should implement it. And you hope that the stragglers see the value in it, or it gets chatted up in the hallways. And over time, your kind of allegiance of people grows, because you're always going to have your naysayers. And what you want to do is help those that want to be helped. One more we have, Kim. We have recently merged with another firm. What should be the first critical steps or method to get all the partners to buy in on a brand? I can field this to start, Kim. Mergers are tough because you're not only merging practices, you're merging personalities and cultures, and often you're adding a tremendous amount of offices and growing. So there's definitely the growing pains of that kind of merge. Now, it's a great time to do a branding exercise to learn from both Firm A and Firm B the reasons why the merger was important to both sides. You hope that aligns. Oftentimes it's slightly different. But it's and the branding exercise can also help bring the management of both firms together very quickly, because what's uncovered in hearing from both Firm A and Firm B will bring these differences to light, and then what you hope to do is come out with a merged brand as to why the two entities together are stronger. Now, if they are radically different, one's super modern and the other is ultra conservative, it's a much tougher deal. Now, that's also a tough merger to have brokered to begin with, but there's some commonality that management saw, both from a business decision and from a personality decision, that brought those firms together originally. And a branding exercise can help bring that out to the public as to why this merger is beneficial to the client base. So we thank everybody very much for joining and participating in our webinar. We do these on a fairly regular basis, so we'll be sure to get you information on the next one should you be interested in joining us. So thank you so much for your time. Have a good day.
Thank you.